spoke to Congressman Cohen a short time ago. Representative Cohen, how can you think that it's appropriate for a member of Congress on the floor of the House to compare the statements made by Republicans about health care to lies about Jews told by Joseph Goebbels and other Nazis? How is that appropriate?
Well, appropriate because it was the same process. Obviously, I don't think Republicans are Nazis, but they used the same means that Goebbels used, which was to have a short, concise idea and repeat it over and over and over again.
But you're essentially comparing them to Nazis.
No, I don't think I was, and I certainly didn't intend to. And when you do a open session like that on the floor, you speak off the cuff. But no, Goebbels was the master of political propaganda. And as evil a man as he was the master of this. And when people use it and use lies over and over and over again, whether it's killing grandma, whether it's government takeover of health care, or any of those things, somebody has to stand up and say, hey, wait a minute,
but
lie.
If you weren't trying to compare them to Nazis, you wouldn't have mentioned Nazis. I mean, you said their statements on health care are the same kind of lies that Nazis told.
I didn't say Nazis. I said...
You said Goebbels. He's the chief propagandist for the Nazi Party. And you said the Germans told lies about the Jews, and that led to the Holocaust. You're saying they're doing the same kind of thing that the Nazis did. That's comparing them.
Well, I didn't intend to do that. I didn't think I did. He is the master political propagandist, and if he wrote treatises on it, he had rules. He is the major person. If you want to talk about political propaganda, the person you talk about who mastered it in terms of the big lie was Goebbels.
So you're standing by this. You don't think it's inappropriate in any way?
Well, I think as far as a lie goes, and I've been writing about lies in the political spectrum for the last 2 months. There was a show that said that the government was creating concentration camps and planned to have a pandemic against its citizens. This was something on True TV.
Yeah, that's Jesse Ventura's ridiculous conspiracy show, which is just a joke. But I mean,
it's not a joke. I wrote an op-ed about it. That's the kind of stuff that produces Oklahoma City's, produced 2 deputy sheriffs being killed in West Memphis.
But Democrats have been very critical when people on the right use Nazi imagery to describe President Obama or Democrats. I just don't understand why you think it's okay to bring in Nazis when you're talking about Republicans.
I think that when it's an appropriate analogy, and if you wanted to talk about some monster scientist, and you mentioned Mengele, it would be appropriate because he was the monster scientist of the last 100 years or maybe of all time, just as Goebbels was the master political propagandist. And I might make it clear here, I don't think any of my colleagues are Nazis. I didn't intend to suggest they were, but they're using the lie over and over is the same type of thing that Goebbels used. But the fact that he was a Nazi and the fact he was a political propagandist can be viewed at in different ways.
But the fact of the matter is you are comparing them to Nazis. I mean, you're saying their tactics are the same tactic as Nazis, and I mean, the National Jewish Democratic Council has come out and says your comments are abusive Holocaust rhetoric. They say that invoking the Holocaust to make a political point is never acceptable.
What if I compared a boxer to Max Schmeling? He was a Nazi. Would that have been terrible?
Max Schmeling was not a leader of the Nazi Party. Yes, he was used by the Nazis, and yes, he certainly, spoke out on behalf of the German government. But he was a bit player. Joseph Goebbels was the major propagandist spreading lies about Jews, and you're comparing what he did to what Republicans
what
do.
What if you compared a submarine commander to Donitz, or if you compared Rommel and the ability to wage war in the desert with tanks? Those were major Nazis. Rommel, he did turn against Hitler, and Donitz, but they were masters at submarine warfare and masters at...
I just don't understand why you have to bring the Nazis in to a discussion about healthcare and your opponents. I mean, your comments seem especially hypocritical given that you just wrote an editorial in Roll Call about the dangers of hateful rhetoric and reckless speech. You wrote, and I quote, "Reckless and hateful speech often has a terrible human cost. If the horrific events in Arizona are not enough to modulate our public discourse, it is likely there will be more violence and more deaths." You really think your comments advance civility in the public discourse?
I guess they don't advance civility per se, but I think telling lies is uncivil, and I think somebody needs to stand up to the lies that are being told. And the fact is, they were similar to what Goebbels said: keep it short, keep it simple, keep it over and over, and people will believe it, and that's what they've done.
But this is not actually the first time that you used this kind of rhetoric. In April last year, during a radio interview, you kind of likened the Tea Party to the KKK, and I just want to play what you said.
The Tea Party people are kind of like without robes and hoods. They have really shown a very hardcore, angry side of America that is against any type of diversity. And we saw opposition to African Americans, hostility toward gays, hostility to anybody who wasn't just, a clone of George Wallace's fan club. and I'm afraid they've taken over the Republican Party.
I mean, isn't that another example of kind of reckless speech?
Well, Anderson, that was a statement I made on radio in Los Angeles. I forget the name of the show right now, but regardless, the Tea Party did arise, kind of like the Klan did after the Civil War. There were people who were out of power. They wanted their power back. The Klan after the Civil War was upset that African Americans had been given the right to vote, and many of them were in office, and they didn't like it, and they wanted to get back their old government. They wanted to take back their government. And the Tea Party feels like they're out of power with President Obama. That's where they started, and they want to take back their government. Now, without robes and hoods, they're not out doing things like the Klan did, but they got formed the same kind of way. They were people who had been dispossessed from being the power
you could
group,
say they're like
and they wanted to take it back.
You could compare them to any populist movement. Comparing them to the KKK seems incendiary. I mean, it seems deeply offensive to, hundreds of thousands of people who are in the Tea Party.
The KKK is reprehensible, but when they started, they were not out lynching as their primary purpose. Their primary purpose was to try to get back political power. They did reprehensible things, but they tried to get back political power they felt was taken away from them. They wanted to go back to the way that things used to be. The fact is, I was among the Tea Party people up here on the health care debate. I walked among them. I saw them. I saw a very angry crowd. I saw pictures of President Obama as Hitler. And I found that reprehensible.
Okay, but again, why that's reprehensible, and yet you use Nazi imagery to describe
but Anderson,
your
the difference
Republican
is
opponents.
President Obama has done nothing like Hitler. He hasn't emulated Goebbels in using...
And you're saying the Republican Party is emulating Goebbels?
They've emulated his tactics of repeating a lie over and over.
You think they've been studying the tactics of Goebbels and using those?
I don't know that they've studied them. I don't know who studied them. But the fact is, that's what they've done. And the fact is, it's been effective, and the fact is they continue to do it to this day. And it was PolitiFact, 2009 Pulitzer Prize-winning journalism organization, that said it was the biggest lie of 2010. It wasn't me that held them up as the biggest liars of the year. It was PolitiFact, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalistic crowd.
Again, you could say your opponents are, salesmen and are using sales tactics to sell something. You don't have to say that they're Nazis and Goebbels.
Anderson, let me say this.
Coming from.
I won't say it again, but I was right.